The rain hammered against the glass doors of the Monarch Tower as Ethan Brooks stood frozen in the hallway, a bouquet of white orchids dripping water onto expensive carpet. Behind him, the elevator doors had already closed. Ahead of him, a woman in a silk robe stared at him from her doorway, her eyes sharp with suspicion. He had 30 seconds to explain why he was standing outside the most expensive penthouse suite in the city at midnight, holding flowers meant for someone else. What he didn't know was that this mistake would cost him everything he had worked for, destroy the careful life he had built for his daughter, and force him to choose between survival and something he had stopped believing in 3 years ago. One wrong door, one chance encounter, and two lives about to collide in ways neither of them could control. Before we dive into this story, I want to invite you to stay with me until the very end. If you enjoy what you hear, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel, and your support means everything. Now, let's begin. The flowers were dying. Ethan Brooks could see it in the way the petals had started to brown at the edges, the way the stems had gone soft in the water-soaked paper. He had picked up this delivery 2 hours ago from Chen's Flower Market on the east side, and the traffic through downtown had turned what should have been a 20-minute drive into a nightmare of gridlock and frustration. Now, standing in the lobby of the Monarch Tower with water dripping from his jacket onto marble floors that probably cost more than his car, he knew he was in trouble. The woman behind the concierge desk looked at him the way people in expensive hotels always looked at delivery drivers, like he was something that had wandered in from the street and needed to be processed quickly before he disturbed the ambiance. "Delivery for suite 2847, Ethan said, setting the flowers carefully on the desk. "Supposed to be there by 10:30. She glanced at the clock on the wall. "It's nearly midnight." "I know. Traffic was Suite 2847 checked out this afternoon." She didn't even look at her computer. "You'll need to contact your dispatcher." Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was his third delivery of the night, and he had already been late to the first two. The app he drove for had a rating system, and his score had been dropping steadily over the past month. One more complaint, one more cancellation, and he would be deactivated, which meant no more late-night runs, which meant no more extra money for Lily's after-school program, or the new shoes she needed, or the field trip permission slip that was sitting on his kitchen counter with a price tag that made his chest tight. "Is there another room I can leave them at?" he asked. "Someone who might know the guest?" The concierge's expression didn't change. "No." "Look, I drove across the city in a storm. These flowers cost someone a lot of money. There has to be—" "Sir." Her voice was polite but final. The guest checked out. "You'll need to leave." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. There was no point. He had learned a long time ago that arguing with people who had power over your livelihood was a waste of breath. He picked up the flowers, nodded once, and turned toward the elevator. The lobby of the Monarch Tower was the kind of place that made you aware of every threadbare edge on your jacket, every scuff on your shoes. Crystal chandeliers, leather furniture arranged in careful groupings, a piano in the corner that nobody was playing. Ethan had delivered to places like this before, and he always felt like an intruder, someone who was only tolerated because he was useful. He pressed the button for the elevator and waited, trying to calculate how much tonight's failure was going to cost him. The flowers had been a premium order, which meant the tip would have been good. He had been counting on it. The electricity bill was due in 3 days, and he was still $40 short. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Ethan stepped inside and pressed the button for the 28th floor without thinking. He knew he wasn't supposed to go up. The delivery was canceled. The guest was gone. But some stubborn part of him couldn't let it go. Maybe there was a manager on that floor. Maybe there was someone who could take the flowers and make sure they didn't go to waste. Maybe he could salvage something from this disaster. The elevator rose smoothly, silently. Ethan watched the numbers climb and thought about Lily, who was asleep right now in the small apartment they shared across town. She would be curled up in her bed with the stuffed rabbit she had named Mr. Hopscotch, her nightlight casting stars across the ceiling. Mrs. Kowalski from next door was watching her tonight, the way she did 3 nights a week when Ethan took the late shifts. She never asked for money, but Ethan always left $20 on her kitchen counter anyway, tucked under a coffee mug where she would find it in the morning. The elevator doors opened onto a hallway that was quieter than the lobby, dimmer. Thick carpet absorbed the sound of his footsteps. The numbers on the doors were brass, polished to a shine. 2,841, 2,843, 2,845. Ethan slowed as he approached 2,847. There was no light under the door, no sound. The concierge had been right. The room was empty. He stood there for a moment, holding the flowers, feeling the weight of the wasted night settle over him. Then he turned to leave, and that was when he saw it. The door to suite 2849 was slightly ajar, just an inch, maybe two. Enough to see a slice of warm light spilling into the hallway, enough to hear the faint sound of music playing somewhere inside. Ethan hesitated. It wasn't his business. He should get back in the elevator, go home, deal with the consequences tomorrow. But something made him pause. The flowers in his hand were still beautiful despite the wilting edges. Someone had ordered them for a reason. Someone had wanted to make someone else smile. He knocked. 3 soft taps, the kind that said he was sorry for disturbing anyone. The music inside stopped. Footsteps approached the door, slow and cautious. Then the door swung open wider, and Ethan found himself looking at a woman who made him forget, for just a second, why he was standing there. She was tall, maybe 5'9", with dark hair pulled back in a way that looked both careless and deliberate. She wore a silk robe the color of charcoal, and her eyes were the kind of green that looked almost gray in certain light. There was something about the way she stood, straight-backed, guarded, that reminded Ethan of the way Lily looked when she was trying not to cry. "Can I help you?" Her voice was cool, measured. Ethan realized he was staring. "I'm sorry, I have a delivery for 2847, but the guest checked out. I thought maybe... You thought maybe I wanted flowers meant for someone else." "No, I just..." He stopped, suddenly aware of how this looked. A stranger at her door. Midnight. A fumbling explanation. "I'm sorry. This was a mistake." He started to turn away, but she spoke again. "What kind of flowers are they?" Ethan looked down at the bouquet in his hand. "White orchids and some kind of greenery. I'm not really good with the names." She stepped closer to the doorway, and he caught the scent of something expensive. Perfume. Or maybe just the air inside a suite that cost more per night than he made in a week. She looked at the flowers for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "They're beautiful," she said finally. "They were supposed to be delivered hours ago. I got stuck in traffic." Story of this city. There was something in her tone, not quite bitter, but close, that made Ethan look at her more carefully. She didn't look like someone who belonged in a place like this. Or maybe she looked exactly like someone who belonged here but wished she didn't. "Well," he said, "I should go. Sorry to bother you." "Wait." He stopped. She was looking at him now, really looking at him, the way people did when they were trying to figure out if you were dangerous or just desperate. Ethan was used to that look. He had gotten it from landlords and loan officers and school administrators who wanted to know why he couldn't make it to parent-teacher conferences on time. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. Ethan blinked. "What? You're soaked. It's late, and those flowers deserve better than a trash can in a hotel lobby." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" He could think of about a dozen reasons. She was a stranger. This was her private suite. He had a daughter waiting for him at home. But what he said was, "Because I'm a delivery driver standing outside your door at midnight, and you don't know anything about me." She smiled then, just barely. "Fair point, but I'm not worried." "You should be." "Are you dangerous?" "No." "Then come in." She stepped back, holding the door open wider. "Just for a minute. I'll take the flowers off your hands, and you can get out of those wet clothes before you catch pneumonia." Ethan knew he should say no. He knew this was the kind of decision that led to complications, the kind of moment that looked different in hindsight than it did in the present. But there was something about the way she was looking at him, not with pity, not with suspicion, but with something that felt almost like recognition, that made him hesitate. "1 minute," he said. She nodded and stepped aside. The suite was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city, rain streaking the glass in patterns that caught the light from the skyline. There was a sitting area with furniture that looked like it had never been sat on, a bar cart with crystal decanters, a grand piano near the windows. Everything was beautiful and impersonal, the kind of space designed to impress rather than comfort. The woman closed the door behind him and gestured toward the sitting area. "You can put the flowers on the table." Ethan set the bouquet down carefully, trying not to drip water on the polished surface. When he turned around, she was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I'm Victoria," she said. "Ethan." "Well, Ethan, can I get you something to drink? Coffee, water, something stronger?" "I should really get going." "You said 1 minute. It's been 30 seconds. He almost smiled. "Coffee would be good." She moved to a machine on the counter that looked like it belonged in a cafe, the kind with levers and gauges and a complexity that seemed designed to intimidate. Ethan stayed where he was, feeling out of place and hyper-aware of the water still dripping from his jacket onto the floor. "You can take that off, you know," Victoria said without turning around. "There's a closet by the door." Ethan hesitated, then shrugged out of his jacket and hung it on a hook inside the closet. Underneath, his shirt was damp but not soaked. He rolled up his sleeves and tried to look like he belonged there, which was impossible. "So," Victoria said as the coffee machine hissed and gurgled, "what's the story with the flowers?" "No story, just a delivery that went wrong." "There's always a story." Ethan leaned against the back of a chair, watching her work. "Someone ordered them for suite 2847. I was supposed to deliver them by 10:30. Traffic was a nightmare, and by the time I got here, the guest had checked out. End of story." "That's not a story. That's a summary." "What's the difference?" She glanced at him over her shoulder. "A story has stakes. A summary is just facts." "Okay. The stakes are that I needed this delivery to go through because I'm trying to keep my rating high enough that I don't get deactivated from the app. If I get deactivated, I lose a third of my income, which means I can't pay for my daughter's after-school program, which means I have to figure out how to leave work early 3 days a week to pick her up, which means I probably lose my day job too. That's the story." Victoria stopped what she was doing. When she turned around, her expression had changed, softer, more serious. "You have a daughter?" "Yeah, Lily. She's 6. "And you're doing this alone?" Ethan didn't like talking about it, but something about the directness of her question made it hard to deflect. "Her mother died 3 years ago. Cancer. So yeah, it's just the two of us." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she finished making the coffee and brought it over to him, 2 cups in delicate porcelain that looked like it would shatter if you breathed on it wrong. "I'm sorry," she said. "It's okay." "No, it's not." Ethan took the cup, grateful for something to hold. The coffee was good, rich and dark and exactly what he needed. They stood there in silence for a moment, and it should have been awkward, but it wasn't. It felt almost comfortable, the way it felt when you were with someone who understood that some things didn't need to be explained. "What about you?" Ethan asked. "What's your story?" Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You don't want to know." "I asked, didn't I?" She walked over to the windows and stood there looking out at the city. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the lights below blurred and shimmered like something out of a painting. "I run a tech company," she said finally, "or I'm supposed to. Right now I'm hiding in a hotel suite because I don't want to deal with board meetings and investor calls, and people who think they know how to run my business better than I do." "Sounds stressful." "It is." She turned to look at him. "But you already knew that, didn't you?" "Knew what?" "That I'm hiding. You can tell when someone's running from something. It's in the way they hold themselves." Ethan thought about that. "Maybe, but I think everyone's running from something." "What are you running from?" The question caught him off guard. He looked down at his coffee, at the dark surface that reflected nothing back. "I'm not running," he said. "I'm just trying to keep up." Victoria came back to the sitting area and sat down on the edge of the couch, her posture still perfect even in the informal setting. "Tell me about your daughter." "Why?" "Because I want to know. And because you look like you don't get asked that question very often." She was right. Most people didn't ask. They saw the tired eyes and the secondhand clothes and the way he was always rushing from one thing to the next, and they made assumptions. Single dad. Struggling. Doing his best. The story wrote itself, and nobody bothered to read past the first page. "Lily's amazing," Ethan said, and he could hear the warmth creeping into his voice despite himself. "She's smart, funny. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up, even though she's never actually had a pet. She draws these pictures of animals she's seen in books, and she makes up whole stories about them. Last week she told me about a raccoon named Gerald who ran a bakery in the woods. Victoria laughed, and it was a real laugh, the kind that changed her whole face. A raccoon baker? Gerald specializes in acorn muffins, apparently. Business is booming. She sounds wonderful. She is. Ethan set his cup down on the table. She's the reason I do this. The deliveries, the overtime, all of it. I want her to have opportunities I didn't have. I want her to grow up knowing she can be anything she wants to be. And a raccoon baker is on the table? If that's what she wants, yeah. Victoria was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. You're a good father. I'm a tired father. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he recognized, the same loneliness he felt on the nights when Lily was asleep and the apartment was too quiet and the weight of everything pressed down on him like a physical thing. It was in the way Victoria held her coffee cup, the way she sat on the edge of the furniture like she was ready to leave at any moment, the way her eyes kept drifting back to the windows as if she was searching for something in the city lights that she couldn't find in the room. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. Sure. Why did you invite me in? Victoria considered the question, turning her cup slowly in her hands. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe because you knocked on the wrong door. Maybe because you looked like you needed a minute to catch your breath. Maybe because I'm tired of talking to people who only want something from me. I don't want anything from you. I know. That's why I let you in. They sat there for a while longer, not talking, just existing in the same space. It was strange how easy it felt, how natural. Ethan had spent the last 3 years building walls around himself, keeping people at a distance because it was easier than explaining why he couldn't go out for drinks after work, or why he had to leave events early, or why he always looked like he was running on 4 hours of sleep. But sitting here with Victoria, a complete stranger in a luxury suite he had no business being in, those walls felt less necessary. Finally, Victoria stood up. You should probably get home. Your daughter's waiting. She's asleep, but yeah, I should go. He stood too, and they walked to the door together. Victoria opened it and handed him his jacket from the closet. Thank you for the coffee, Ethan said, and for taking the flowers. Thank you for the company. She paused, then added, if you ever need to knock on the wrong door again, mine's usually open. Ethan smiled. I'll keep that in mind. He stepped into the hallway, and she closed the door softly behind him. As he walked back to the elevator, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. A lightness, a sense that maybe the world wasn't quite as heavy as he had been making it. It was a small thing, a brief conversation with a stranger, but it had shifted something inside him. The elevator doors opened, and he stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby. As the car descended, he pulled out his phone and saw 3 missed calls from his dispatcher and a notification that his delivery had been canceled. His rating had dropped another point. Tomorrow would be harder because of tonight. But for some reason, standing there in the elevator with his damp jacket and his empty hands, Ethan didn't feel as defeated as he probably should have. He felt something else, something that might have been hope. When he got home, Mrs. Kowalski was asleep on the couch with the television on low. Ethan turned it off gently and covered her with a blanket before leaving the $20 on her counter. Then he went to Lily's room and stood in the doorway, watching his daughter sleep. She was sprawled across the bed, one arm flung over Mr. Hopscotch, her hair a tangle of dark curls on the pillow. The nightlight cast soft shadows on her face, and Ethan felt the familiar ache in his chest that came from loving someone so much it terrified you. I met someone tonight, he whispered, even though she couldn't hear him. I don't know if it matters. Probably doesn't. But she asked about you, and I told her about Gerald the raccoon baker, and she laughed. I thought you'd like that. Lily stirred but didn't wake. Ethan stood there for another minute, watching her breathe, then went to his own room. He didn't bother changing out of his damp clothes. He just lay down on top of the covers and closed his eyes, and for the first time in months, he fell asleep without the usual weight pressing on his chest. The next morning came too early. Lily was up at 6:30, bouncing on his bed and demanding pancakes. Ethan dragged himself to the kitchen and made her breakfast while she chattered about a dream she'd had involving Gerald and a dragon who wanted to learn how to bake. Can dragons even eat muffins? Lily asked, her mouth full of pancake. I don't know. What do you think? I think they can eat whatever they want because they're dragons. Fair point. After breakfast, Ethan got Lily ready for school and walked her to the bus stop 3 blocks away. She held his hand the whole way, talking nonstop about her upcoming field trip to the Science Museum and how her friend Emma had lost a tooth, and how the class hamster was named Mr. Whiskers, even though he didn't have very impressive whiskers. Dad? She said as the bus pulled up. Yeah, kiddo? Are you okay? Ethan looked down at her, surprised. Of course. Why? You seem different today, like you're thinking about something far away. Kids noticed everything. It was terrifying sometimes how perceptive they were. I'm fine, Ethan said, crouching down to her level. Just tired. You know how it is? You're always tired. She threw her arms around his neck and squeezed. Love you, Dad. Love you too, Lily. She climbed onto the bus, waving at him from the window as it pulled away. Ethan waved back until the bus turned the corner, then he started the walk back to the apartment. He had 3 hours before his shift at the warehouse started. 3 hours to shower, maybe catch an hour of sleep, and try not to think about the woman in the penthouse suite who had looked at him like he was worth listening to. His phone buzzed, a text from his dispatcher. Your rating dropped below 4.5, one more cancellation and you're out. Get it together. Ethan stared at the message, then shoved the phone back in his pocket. He would deal with it later. Right now, he needed to focus on getting through the day. But as he walked back through the morning streets, past the corner store and the laundromat, and the Vietnamese restaurant that always smelled like ginger and lemongrass, he kept thinking about Victoria, about the way she had stood at the window looking out at the city, about the loneliness in her eyes that matched his own, about the strange, unexpected comfort of sitting in silence with someone who understood what it meant to be running even when you were standing still. It didn't matter. It couldn't matter. She was a tech billionaire hiding in a penthouse suite, and he was a warehouse worker delivering flowers on the side to make ends meet. Their worlds didn't overlap. Last night had been a fluke, a moment out of time that would never be repeated. But when Ethan got back to the apartment and lay down on his bed, staring at the ceiling with the alarm set for 45 minutes from now, he allowed himself to imagine, just for a second, what it might be like to knock on that door again. The alarm didn't go off. Ethan woke to sunlight streaming through the blinds and the sickening realization that it was past 9. He had slept through his shift. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands and saw 7 missed calls from the warehouse, 3 texts from his supervisor, and 1 final message that made his stomach drop. Don't bother coming in. We'll mail your final check. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen, trying to process what had just happened. 4 years at that warehouse. 4 years of showing up early, staying late, covering shifts for people who called in sick. Gone. Because he had been too exhausted to hear an alarm. His phone buzzed again. Another text, this one from a number he didn't recognize. Is this Ethan Brooks? He almost didn't answer, but something made him type back. Yes. Who is this? The response came immediately. This is Marcus Chen from the Daily Observer. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your relationship with Victoria Hale. Ethan read the message 3 times. Then he opened his browser and typed Victoria's name into the search bar. The first result was a photograph. It had been taken last night in the lobby of the Monarch Tower. The image was grainy, clearly shot from a distance, but there was no mistaking what it showed. Ethan standing by the elevator, wet jacket, flowers in hand. And in the background, barely visible but unmistakable, Victoria's face as she watched him leave. The headline read, Tech Billionaire's Mystery Man. Victoria Hale's secret midnight visitor. Ethan's hands went cold. He scrolled through the article, his heart pounding harder with each sentence. The piece was full of speculation and innuendo, painting him as some kind of opportunist who had charmed his way into Victoria's suite. There were quotes from unnamed sources about Victoria's recent withdrawal from public life, suggestions that she was making poor decisions, implications that Ethan was taking advantage of her vulnerability. By the time he reached the end, his phone was ringing again. More unknown numbers, more reporters. He turned the phone off and sat in the silence of his apartment, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Last night he had knocked on a door. He had drunk coffee with a stranger. He had talked about his daughter and gone home. That was all. But somehow, in the space of 12 hours, that simple moment had turned into something unrecognizable. His phone buzzed one more time before the screen went dark. A text from Mrs. Kowalski. "Ethan, there are people outside the building with cameras. What's going on?" He looked out the window and saw them. 3 photographers with professional equipment, 1 news van with a satellite dish. They were camped out on the sidewalk, waiting. Ethan grabbed his keys and went down the back stairs, the ones that opened onto the alley behind the building. He made it to his car without being seen and drove across town to the elementary school, arriving just as the lunch period was starting. The school secretary recognized him immediately. "Mr. Brooks, is everything all right? I need to pick up Lily early. Is she sick?" "No, it's a family emergency." The secretary looked concerned but didn't press. She called down to the classroom, and 5 minutes later Lily appeared in the office, her backpack bouncing on her shoulders. "Dad?" She looked confused. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, kiddo. We're just taking the afternoon off." "Like a surprise day?" "Yeah, exactly like that." They drove to the park on the west side of town, the one with the big playground and the duck pond. Lily ran straight for the swings, and Ethan pushed her for 20 minutes, listening to her laugh and trying to figure out what to do next. When she finally got tired of the swings, they sat on a bench by the pond and watched the ducks glide across the water. "Dad?" Lily said, leaning against his arm. "Are you in trouble?" "What makes you think that?" "You have that look, the one you get when bills come in the mail." Ethan put his arm around her shoulders. "I'm not in trouble. I just had a bad day at work." "Did you get fired?" Kids really did notice everything. "Maybe," Ethan said carefully. "But we'll be okay. We always are." Lily was quiet for a moment, watching a duck dive under the water and pop back up with something in its beak. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever get lonely?" The question caught him off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because sometimes when I wake up at night, I see you sitting in the living room by yourself. And you look sad." Ethan felt something tight in his chest. He had tried so hard to shield her from the harder parts of their life, to make sure she felt secure and loved and normal. But she saw more than he wanted her to see. "Sometimes I get lonely," he admitted. "But then I remember I have you, and it gets better." "I miss Mom too," Lily said softly. "I know you do, kiddo. Do you think she would be proud of us?" "I think she would be incredibly proud of you." "What about you?" Ethan looked out at the water, at the way the light caught on the ripples. "I hope so." They sat there for a while longer, and Ethan let himself pretend that everything was fine, that they were just a father and daughter enjoying an afternoon at the park. But eventually his phone started buzzing again, the vibrations insistent, even with the sound off, and he knew he couldn't hide forever. On the drive home, he took a detour past the warehouse. His car was still in the employee lot where he had left it yesterday. He pulled up beside it, and Lily stayed in the car while he went to retrieve a few personal items from his locker. A spare jacket, a water bottle, a photo of Lily he kept taped to the inside of the door. The warehouse was quiet. Most of the day shift was out on deliveries. But as Ethan was closing his locker, he heard footsteps behind him. "Heard you made the news," a voice said. Ethan turned. Marcus was standing there, one of the other drivers, a guy who had worked there longer than anyone. He had a coffee in one hand and a phone in the other, the screen showing the same photo Ethan had seen that morning. "It's not what it looks like," Ethan said. "Never is." Marcus took a sip of his coffee. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're the kind of guy who chases rich women. But that doesn't matter much, does it? People believe what they want to believe." I just delivered flowers to the wrong room." "That's a hell of a wrong turn." Ethan closed the locker and pocketed the key. "Thanks for the support." "Hey, I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. You got caught up in something you weren't ready for. Now you're paying the price." Marcus shrugged. "Welcome to the world, man. It's not fair, but it is what it is." Ethan left without responding. When he got back to the car, Lily was drawing in her notebook, her tongue sticking out in concentration, the way it always did when she was focused. "What are you working on?" he asked as he started the engine. "A picture of Gerald opening his new bakery location. He's expanding to the mountains." "Business must be really good." "The best. He's thinking about franchising." Ethan smiled despite everything. "Smart raccoon." When they got back to the apartment, the photographers were still there. Ethan parked around the block and took Lily in through the back entrance again, but as they climbed the stairs, he could hear voices in the hallway above. More reporters, probably. Or maybe neighbors who wanted answers. He stopped on the landing between floors and crouched down to Lily's level. "Listen to me," he said. "When we get upstairs, there might be some people with cameras. I need you to stay close to me and not talk to anyone, okay?" "Why do they want to take our picture?" "Because they think something happened that didn't actually happen, and they want to make a story out of it." "What kind of story?" "The wrong kind." He took her hand. "Just stay close." They made it to the apartment without incident, but the moment Ethan closed the door behind them, his phone rang. This time, it was a number he recognized, his lawyer, a guy named David who had helped him navigate the legal aftermath of his wife's death, and who Ethan paid in installments whenever he could afford it. "David," Ethan said, putting the phone on speaker while Lily went to her room. "Tell me this isn't as bad as it looks." "It's worse," David said flatly. "I've been getting calls all morning from reporters asking me to confirm or deny various stories about you and Victoria Hale. They're digging into your background, your finances, your employment history. One of them asked me if you have a criminal record. I don't have a criminal record. I know that, but the fact that they're asking means they're looking for anything they can use. This is a feeding frenzy, Ethan, and you're the meal." Ethan sat down at the kitchen table and put his head in his hands. "What do I do?" "Nothing. Don't talk to reporters. Don't post on social media. Don't do anything that could be twisted or misinterpreted. Just keep your head down and wait for this to blow over." "And if it doesn't blow over?" David was quiet for a moment. "Then we deal with it. But right now, the best thing you can do is stay invisible." After they hung up, Ethan sat at the table and tried to think. He needed to find another job, and fast. The delivery app had already deactivated his account. He had checked during the drive home. His warehouse job was gone. He had maybe 3 weeks of rent money saved, and after that, nothing. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. But this time, the text message that came through wasn't from a reporter. "Ethan, it's Victoria. I'm so sorry about what's happening. Can we talk?" He stared at the message for a long time. Part of him wanted to respond, to tell her that none of this was her fault, that he didn't blame her for the chaos his life had become. But another part of him knew that talking to her would only make things worse. The photographers outside weren't going to disappear just because he explained the truth. The damage was already done. He turned his phone off without responding. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat in the living room with the lights off and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. 24 hours ago, he had been tired but stable. Now he was unemployed, harassed, and watching his life unravel in real time. He thought about what Marcus had said. You got caught up in something you weren't ready for. Maybe that was true. Maybe he should have known better than to knock on that door, to accept that invitation, to let himself believe, even for a moment, that he could exist in a world that wasn't built for people like him. The knock on his door came just after midnight. Ethan stood slowly, moving to the peephole. He expected reporters. What he saw instead was Victoria, standing in the hallway with her hood up and her hands in her pockets, looking nothing like the polished billionaire from the penthouse suite. He opened the door. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, aware of Lily sleeping in the next room. "I know." Victoria's voice was strained. "But I couldn't just sit there and do nothing while your life falls apart because of me. It's not your fault." "Yes, it is. I invited you in. I made it into something people could speculate about, and now you're paying the price." Ethan stepped out into the hallway and closed the door behind him. "How did you even know where I live?" "I hired someone to find you. I'm sorry. I know that sounds invasive, but I needed to talk to you." They stood there in the dim hallway, and Ethan could see the genuine distress in her eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and she was wearing jeans and a plain sweater, nothing that would attract attention. "You need to leave," Ethan said. "If someone sees you here, it'll only make things worse." "I don't care." "I do. I have a daughter, Victoria. Whatever happens to me, she doesn't deserve to be dragged through this." Victoria flinched like he had hit her. "I'm trying to help." "Then go. Issue a statement. Tell them it was nothing. Tell them I was just a delivery driver who knocked on the wrong door. Make it boring and forgettable and move on. And what about you? I'll figure it out. I always do. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, and something in her expression shifted. You know what I realized today? Everyone in my life wants something from me. Money, access, connections, favors. But you don't want anything. You never did, and that terrifies them. Who's them? The board, the investors, the people who think they know what's best for me. She stepped closer. They called an emergency meeting this morning. Told me I needed to distance myself from you publicly. Told me I was making the company look unstable. So do it. I don't want to. Victoria, my whole life I've done what other people expected. I built a company because that's what smart people do. I went to the right schools, made the right connections, said the right things at the right times. And you know what I have to show for it? A penthouse suite I hide in and a job I don't even enjoy anymore. Ethan could hear the emotion building in her voice, see it in the way she was standing, like she was holding herself together through sheer will. Last night was the first time in years that I felt like a person, she continued. Not a CEO, not a brand, just someone having coffee with someone else who actually listened when I talked. And I know it doesn't make sense. I know we're from different worlds, but I don't want to just walk away and pretend it didn't matter. It can't matter, Ethan said quietly. Look at what happened in one day. I lost my job. I can't leave my apartment without cameras in my face. My daughter asked me if I was in trouble. This isn't sustainable. Then let me fix it. How? I don't know yet, but I will. Just give me time. Ethan wanted to believe her. He wanted to think that there was some way to untangle this mess, some path forward that didn't end with him struggling to keep his head above water while she went back to her life and forgot he existed. But he had learned a long time ago that wanting something didn't make it real. You should go, he said again, softer this time. Victoria nodded slowly. Okay, but Ethan? Yeah? I meant what I said. About feeling like a person. Thank you for that. She turned and walked down the hallway, her footsteps quiet on the worn carpet. Ethan watched her go, then went back inside and locked the door behind him. He checked on Lily, still asleep, still peaceful, and then went to his own room. But he didn't sleep. He lay there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the building settling around him, and thought about Victoria standing in his hallway looking lost. The next morning brought more bad news. Ethan's landlord called to say that photographers had been harassing other tenants, and if it continued, he would have no choice but to ask Ethan to leave. The school called to say that reporters had been spotted near the playground and that security would be increased. Even Mrs. Kowalski knocked on his door to say that someone had offered her $500 for an interview about what kind of neighbor he was. I told them to shove it, she said, her accent thick with indignation. But Ethan, you need to be careful. These people, they don't care who they hurt. By noon, Ethan had made a decision. He couldn't stay in the city. Not like this. He had a cousin in Oregon who had offered him work before, manual labor on a construction crew. It wouldn't pay much, but it would be enough to start over somewhere quiet, somewhere Lily could be just a kid instead of the daughter of the man in the headlines. He started packing that afternoon, sorting through their belongings and deciding what to keep and what to leave behind. Lily watched from the doorway of her room, confused. Are we moving? She asked. Maybe, just for a little while. Because of the cameras? Because I think we could use a change. What about school? What about Emma and Mr. Whiskers? Ethan sat down on the floor beside a half-packed box. Come here, kiddo. Lily came over and sat in his lap, and he wrapped his arms around her. I know this is scary, he said, and I know you don't understand what's happening, but I promise you, no matter where we go or what changes, you're always going to be safe. You're always going to be loved, and we're always going to have each other. I don't want to leave, Lily said, her voice small. I know. Can't we just make the cameras go away? I wish we could. She was quiet for a moment, then said, Is this because of the lady from the hotel? Ethan pulled back to look at her. What do you know about that? Emma's mom told her about it. She said you were on the news. What did Emma say? Lily shrugged. She asked if you were famous now. I said, no, you're just my dad. Ethan felt something break inside him. His daughter shouldn't have to defend him to her friends. She shouldn't have to know anything about boardrooms or headlines or the way the world punished people for mistakes that weren't even mistakes. Listen to me, he said, holding her face in his hands. None of this is your fault, and none of this changes who we are. We're still us, okay? Okay. That night, after Lily was in bed, Ethan's phone rang one more time. He almost didn't answer, but the caller ID showed David's number. Tell me you have good news, Ethan said. I have complicated news. Victoria Hale's legal team reached out. They want to meet with you. Why? They didn't say, but they were very insistent that it happen as soon as possible. I'm not interested. Ethan, you should hear them out. If they're offering to help, I don't want her help. I just want this to be over. David sighed. I understand. But think about it. If she's willing to make a public statement, if she's willing to use her resources to clear your name, it might be worth listening to what they have to say. Ethan closed his eyes. Set it up. But make it clear that I'm not agreeing to anything. Fair enough? The meeting was scheduled for the next afternoon at a law office downtown. Ethan borrowed Mrs. Kowalski's car to avoid the photographers and arrived 15 minutes early, his palms sweating despite the air conditioning. Victoria was already there, sitting in a conference room with 3 lawyers in expensive suits. She stood when he walked in, and he could see the relief in her eyes. Thank you for coming, she said. Ethan didn't sit down. What do you want, Victoria? One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Mr. Brooks, we understand the situation has been difficult for you. Ms. Hale would like to make amends. How? Victoria stepped forward. I want to hold a press conference. I want to tell them the truth, that you were a delivery driver who knocked on the wrong door, that we talked for less than an hour, and that the rest is fabrication. I want to clear your name. And what do you get out of it? Nothing. I just want to fix what I broke. Ethan looked at her, trying to read her expression. Your board won't like that. I don't care what they like. You should. They're the ones who can take everything from you. Victoria's jaw tightened. They already did. This morning they gave me an ultimatum. Either I publicly distance myself from you and this entire situation, or I step down as CEO. The room went very quiet. What did you say? Ethan asked. I told them I needed time to think about it. Victoria, I built that company from nothing, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I worked 20-hour days. I sacrificed relationships, health, everything. And now they're telling me I have to choose between my integrity and my position. So I'm asking you, what would you do? Ethan thought about Lily, about the way she had said, "You're just my dad," like it was the most important thing in the world. He thought about the years since his wife died, the way he had built a life out of scraps and determination and love. He thought about what mattered and what didn't. I choose the thing that lets me sleep at night, he said finally. Victoria smiled, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. That's what I thought you'd say. She turned to the lawyers. Draft the statement, schedule the press conference for tomorrow morning, and make it clear that anyone who has a problem with it can take it up with me directly. The lawyers exchanged glances but nodded. Victoria looked back at Ethan. I know this doesn't fix everything. I know you lost your job and your privacy and your peace, but I'm going to do everything I can to make it right. You don't have to do this, Ethan said. Yes, I do. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her face, the determination in her eyes. Because you were right. About choosing the thing that lets you sleep at night. I haven't slept well in years. Maybe it's time I started. The press conference was scheduled for 10 in the morning at the Monarch Tower. Ethan didn't plan to attend. He had said what he needed to say in that conference room, and the rest was Victoria's battle to fight. But at 9:30, his phone rang, and it was Victoria herself. I need you there, she said without preamble. Why? Because if I stand up there alone and tell them you're just a delivery driver who means nothing to me, it'll look like I'm protecting my image. But if you're standing beside me, if people can see that you're a real person and not some tabloid fantasy, it might actually mean something. Victoria, I can't. The photographers, the questions. I'll have security. You won't have to say a word. Just stand there and let them see you're not who they think you are. Ethan looked across the apartment at Lily, who was eating cereal at the kitchen table and watching cartoons on his laptop. She had school in an hour, and he had promised Mrs. Kowalski he would help her move some furniture this afternoon. His life was barely holding together as it was. "Please," Victoria said, and there was something in her voice that reminded him of the woman who had opened her door to a stranger in the rain. "I can't do this alone." 20 minutes later, Ethan was in Mrs. Kowalski's car again, driving toward downtown with his hands gripping the wheel too tight. He had called the school and told them Lily would be late. He had texted Mrs. Kowalski and promised to make it up to her. Now he was heading straight into the center of the storm he had been trying to avoid. The Monarch Tower lobby had been transformed into a media circus. Cameras on tripods, reporters with microphones, photographers jockeying for position. Security guards formed a perimeter around a small stage that had been set up near the windows, and behind them, Ethan could see Victoria's legal team moving through the crowd like shepherds managing a flock. He parked in the underground garage and took the service elevator up, the way Victoria's assistant had instructed him over text. When the doors opened, he found himself in a back hallway that smelled like cleaning supplies and old carpet. Victoria was waiting for him, dressed in a navy suit that made her look like she was heading into battle. "You came," she said, and the relief in her voice was palpable. "Against my better judgment. That seems to be a theme with us." She tried to smile, but it didn't quite work. "Are you ready?" "No?" "Me neither." They stood there for a moment, two people who barely knew each other about to walk into a room full of strangers who thought they knew everything. Ethan could hear the murmur of voices from the lobby, the clicking of camera shutters, the artificial energy of people waiting for something to happen. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked. "Just stand next to me. Look calm. Don't answer any questions unless I signal you to, and even then, keep it simple." "This is insane." "I know." Victoria straightened her jacket, and Ethan saw her hands were shaking. "But it's the only way I know how to fix this." One of the lawyers appeared in the hallway. "Ms. Hale, we're ready when you are." Victoria nodded, then looked at Ethan. "Last chance to back out." "You first." She almost laughed. Then she took a deep breath and walked toward the lobby, and Ethan followed because he had said he would, and because somewhere in the chaos of the last 3 days, he had started to care what happened to her. The moment they stepped into the lobby, the noise level tripled. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Security pushed back against the crowd, creating a narrow path to the stage. Victoria walked forward with her head up, and Ethan stayed close behind her, trying not to look at the faces staring at him like he was an exhibit in a zoo. They reached the stage, and Victoria stepped up to the microphone. Ethan stood to her left, slightly behind, the way the lawyer had positioned him. From here, he could see the entire room. The cameras pointed at them like weapons, the reporters with their notebooks and recorders, the curious onlookers who had wandered in from the street. Somewhere in the back, he spotted the photographer who had taken the original picture, the one that had started all of this. Victoria cleared her throat, and the room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor Ethan had seen in her hands. "I'm here to address the rumors and speculation that have been circulating about my personal life over the past few days." She paused, and Ethan could feel the attention of the room shift, sharpening. 3 nights ago, a delivery driver named Ethan Brooks accidentally knocked on my hotel suite while attempting to deliver flowers to another guest. The guest had checked out. Mr. Brooks was lost, wet from the rain, and trying to salvage a delivery that had already gone wrong. I invited him in for coffee. We talked for approximately 40 minutes. Then he left. That is the entire story. A reporter near the front raised her hand. "Ms. Hale, if it was such an innocent encounter, why did you feel the need to hide it?" "I didn't hide it. I didn't think it was newsworthy. A stranger knocked on my door. I offered him basic hospitality." "That's not a scandal. That's just being human." Another reporter jumped in. "But surely you understand how it looks? A single woman, a single man, late at night. I understand how it looks when people are determined to create a narrative that doesn't exist," Victoria said, her voice sharpening. "Mr. Brooks lost his job because of the speculation surrounding our brief conversation. He's been harassed by photographers. His daughter has been affected. All because I made the mistake of treating another person with kindness." The room erupted with questions, but Victoria raised her hand and the noise died down again. I want to be very clear about something, she continued. The board of directors of my company has asked me to publicly distance myself from this situation and from Mr. Brooks specifically. They believe that my association with him, however minimal, reflects poorly on the company's image. This morning, I informed them that I will not be following their directive. Ethan felt his stomach drop. This wasn't part of the plan. The lawyers had drafted a statement that was supposed to be careful, measured, designed to diffuse the situation without creating new problems. What Victoria was doing now was the opposite of that. I built Hale Technologies from the ground up, Victoria said, and now there was emotion in her voice, raw and unfiltered. I've given that company 15 years of my life. But if the price of keeping my position is compromising my integrity and throwing a decent man under the bus to protect a narrative, then I'm not interested. A reporter in the middle of the crowd stood up. Are you saying you're resigning? Victoria looked directly at the camera. I'm saying that I refuse to participate in a system that punishes people for being human. Whether that costs me my job or not is up to the board. The room exploded. Questions flew from every direction, voices overlapping, cameras flashing in a strobe effect that made Ethan's head spin. Victoria stood there taking it, her expression calm even as the chaos swirled around her. Then she stepped back from the microphone and turned to Ethan. We're done here, she said quietly. Security moved in immediately, forming a wall between them and the reporters as they were escorted back through the lobby and into the service hallway. Once the door closed behind them, the noise cut off abruptly, leaving only the sound of their breathing and the fluorescent lights humming overhead. What did you just do? Ethan asked. Victoria leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. I have no idea. The board is going to fire you. Probably. And you're okay with that? She opened her eyes and looked at him. I don't know if I'm okay with it, but I know I couldn't stand up there and lie. I couldn't throw you away just to keep them happy. One of the lawyers appeared in the hallway, his face pale. Ms. Hale, the board is requesting an emergency meeting in 1 hour. Of course they are, Victoria pushed off from the wall. Tell them I'll be there. The lawyer hesitated. They're going to ask for your resignation. Then I guess we'll see what happens. After the lawyer left, Victoria turned back to Ethan. I'm sorry, I know this wasn't what you signed up for. What I signed up for was a press conference to clear my name. What you just did was career suicide. Maybe, but at least I'll be able to sleep tonight. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was being reckless and impulsive and throwing away everything she had built for someone she barely knew. But he couldn't, because he understood exactly what she was doing. He had made the same choice 3 years ago when his wife got sick, when he had walked away from a promising job to spend her final months by her side. Sometimes the right choice was also the hardest one. What are you going to do? He asked. Go to the meeting, hear what they have to say, and then decide if I want to fight or if I want to walk away. And if you walk away? Victoria smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Then I guess I'll figure out who I am when I'm not a CEO. They stood there in the hallway for another moment, and Ethan realized that something had shifted between them. It wasn't just sympathy anymore, or shared loneliness, or two people who had stumbled into each other's lives by accident. It was something deeper, something that scared him because he hadn't felt it in 3 years and didn't know if he was ready to feel it now. I should go, he said finally. Lily's waiting. Ethan, Victoria caught his arm as he turned to leave. Thank you for being here, for standing beside me when you had every reason to run. You're welcome. He left through the service elevator and drove back across town, his mind spinning with everything that had just happened. The press conference would be all over the news by noon. The board meeting would probably leak within hours. And Victoria had just put everything on the line for a principle, for the idea that people mattered more than optics. When he got back to the apartment, Mrs. Kowalski was sitting on the couch with Lily, who was supposed to be at school but was instead watching cartoons in her pajamas. The school called, Mrs. Kowalski said, her expression grim. They said there were photographers at the gates. They thought it was best if Lily stayed home today. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. Are you serious? I'm sorry, Ethan. They said it was for her safety. He looked at Lily. who was completely absorbed in the cartoon, oblivious to the fact that her life was being upended by forces she couldn't understand. He had tried so hard to protect her from this, to keep her world stable and normal. But it was falling apart anyway. "Thank you for watching her," Ethan said to Mrs. Kowalski. "I'll figure something out." But after she left, Ethan sat down on the couch next to Lily and pulled her close. She leaned against him without taking her eyes off the screen. "Dad?" she said after a while. "Yeah? Are we still moving to Oregon?" He had forgotten he had mentioned that. "I don't know, kiddo. Maybe. I don't want to move." "I know. Can't we just make things go back to normal?" Ethan kissed the top of her head. "I'm trying." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Ethan fielded calls from reporters he didn't answer and texts from numbers he didn't recognize. The press conference footage was everywhere. News websites, social media, video clips dissected frame by frame. Some people praised Victoria for her integrity. Others called her reckless and naive. A few conspiracy theorists suggested the whole thing was a publicity stunt. By evening, the story had evolved again. The board had issued a statement accepting Victoria's resignation, effective immediately. There was a new CEO being announced tomorrow. Victoria Hale was out. Ethan read the news on his phone while Lily ate dinner, and he felt a strange mix of emotions. Guilt that she had sacrificed so much, admiration for her courage, and worry about what came next. She had walked away from everything, and for what? To defend someone she barely knew? To prove a point? His phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Victoria. "Can I see you?" He should have said no. He should have told her that this needed to end, that they had caused enough damage to each other's lives already. But instead, he texted back, "Where?" "The park on Maple Street, the one with the duck pond. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Ethan got Mrs. Kowalski to watch Lily again. She was starting to give him concerned looks, but didn't ask questions, and drove to the park. It was nearly dark when he arrived, the last light fading from the sky and the street lamps flickering on one by one. Victoria was sitting on the same bench where Ethan had sat with Lily 2 days ago. She had changed out of her suit and was wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable than she had at the press conference. Ethan sat down beside her. "You resigned. They accepted it faster than I expected. I don't think they even tried to talk me out of it. Are you okay?" "I don't know." She was quiet for a moment, watching the ducks settle in for the night. "I keep waiting to feel something. Regret, anger, relief. But I just feel numb." "It'll hit you later. That's how these things work." "Is that what happened when your wife died?" The question was so direct it caught him off guard. "Yeah. For the first few weeks, I was just focused on taking care of Lily, making arrangements, dealing with logistics. Then one day about a month later, I was making breakfast and I just fell apart, couldn't stop crying. Lily thought something was wrong with the pancakes." Victoria smiled faintly. "What did you tell her?" "That sometimes grown-ups need to cry too. She made me a card that said it's okay to be sad, with a picture of a rainbow. I still have it." They sat in silence for a while, and Ethan became aware of how close she was sitting, how easy it would be to reach over and take her hand. He didn't, but the thought was there. "I need to tell you something," Victoria said eventually, "and I need you to really hear it." "Okay?" She turned to face him, and in the dim light from the street lamps, her eyes looked almost silver. "I didn't resign because I felt guilty about what happened to you. I resigned because standing up there today and telling the truth was the first time in years I felt like myself. And I realized that I had been lying for so long, to the board, to investors, to myself, that I didn't even know who I was anymore." "Victoria, let me finish." She took a breath. "When you knocked on my door that night, you weren't trying to impress me. You weren't performing or calculating your next move. You were just a tired father trying to do his job and take care of his daughter. And talking to you reminded me what it felt like to be around someone who was real." Ethan felt something shift in his chest. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't want you to say anything. I just want you to know that what happened this week, all of it, wasn't a mistake. It was a wake-up call. And I'm grateful for it, even if it cost me everything. You didn't have to lose everything. Maybe I did. Maybe I needed to lose it all to figure out what actually matters." A duck quacked from somewhere near the water, and they both turned to look. The pond was dark now, the surface reflecting the lights from across the street. "What are you going to do now?" Ethan asked. "I don't know. For the first time in my adult life, I have no plan, no schedule, no obligations." She laughed softly. "It's terrifying. Welcome to my world." "Is it always this uncertain?" "Pretty much, but you learn to live with it." Victoria was quiet for a moment, then said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "That night in my suite when we were talking about your daughter, you said you wanted her to know she could be anything she wanted to be. Do you believe that?" "For her, yes." "But not for you?" Ethan thought about that. "I used to, before everything happened. Now I'm just trying to get through each day." "That's not living. That's surviving. Sometimes surviving is enough." Victoria turned to look at him fully now, and there was an intensity in her gaze that made him uncomfortable. What if it didn't have to be? What if you could have more? More of what? More of everything. Time, freedom, choices. What if you didn't have to work 3 jobs just to keep your head above water? What if Lily could go to any school she wanted, join any program, take any class? What if you could actually breathe? Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What are you offering, Victoria?" "I'm not offering anything. I'm just asking what if." "Because it sounds like you're about to offer me money, and I'm not interested." "Why not?" "Because I don't need to be rescued. I'm doing fine." "Are you?" Her voice was gentle but firm. "You lost your job because of me. You can't leave your apartment without being photographed. Your daughter can't go to school. How is any of that fine?" Ethan stood up, suddenly needing space. "I don't want your money, Victoria. I don't want to be your charity case or your redemption project or whatever this is." She stood too, closing the distance between them. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" "I don't know." The frustration in her voice surprised them both. "I don't know what this is, but I know that I care about what happens to you. I know that I think about you constantly. I know that when I stood up in front of those cameras today, the only thing that mattered was making sure you were okay. And maybe that's crazy. Maybe it doesn't make any sense, but it's true." Ethan stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "We've known each other for 3 days." "I know. You're a billionaire CEO, or you were." "I know that too. This can't work. You see that, right? We're from completely different worlds." Victoria stepped closer, close enough that he could see the determination in her eyes mixed with something that looked like fear. "Then maybe it's time to stop thinking about worlds and start thinking about people." "Victoria, I'm not asking you to make a decision right now. I'm not asking you to feel the same way I do. I'm just asking you not to shut me out because you think we're too different, or because it seems impossible. Because right now, standing here with you is the only thing that feels real." Ethan wanted to argue. He wanted to list all the reasons why this was a terrible idea, why getting involved with her would only make his life more complicated, why he needed to focus on Lily and stability and rebuilding what he had lost. But looking at Victoria in the lamplight, seeing the vulnerability in her expression and the hope she was trying so hard to hide, he couldn't make himself say any of it. "I need to think," he said finally. "Okay? And I need you to understand that whatever happens, Lily comes first, always." "I wouldn't expect anything else." They stood there for another moment, the space between them charged with everything they weren't saying. Then Ethan stepped back. "I should get home. Mrs. Kowalski has been watching Lily too much lately." "Of course." Victoria's voice was steady, but he could see the disappointment in her eyes. "Ethan?" He turned back. "Thank you for hearing me out. I know this is a lot." "Yeah, it is." He walked back to his car and drove home through streets that seemed quieter than usual, his mind replaying the conversation over and over. When he got back to the apartment, Lily was already asleep, and Mrs. Kowalski was dozing on the couch with the television on mute. He woke her gently and walked her to the door, pressing $40 into her hand even though she protested. "You're a good man, Ethan," she said before she left. "Don't forget that." After she was gone, Ethan checked on Lily one more time, then sat down at the kitchen table with his laptop and started searching for jobs. He needed income. He needed stability. He needed to prove to himself that he could still provide for his daughter without anyone's help. But as he scrolled through listings for warehouse positions and delivery routes and overnight shifts, his mind kept drifting back to the park. To Victoria's voice, when she said caring about him, was the only thing that felt real. to the look in her eyes when he walked away. He closed the laptop and put his head in his hands. The knock on the door came just after midnight, and this time Ethan knew who it was before he opened it. Victoria was standing in the hallway again, but this time she looked different. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were red, and she was holding something in her hands, a folder, thick with papers. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "And I kept thinking about what you said, about not wanting to be rescued, about wanting to provide for your daughter on your own terms. So I stayed up, and I made this." She held out the folder. Ethan took it cautiously. "What is it?" "A business proposal. I'm starting a foundation to support single parents who are struggling to make ends meet. Job training, childcare assistance, emergency funds, mentorship programs. I want you to help me run it." Ethan opened the folder and saw page after page of detailed plans, budgets, program outlines, partnership proposals with existing organizations. It was comprehensive and thoughtful and clearly the work of hours. "You made this tonight?" "I told you I couldn't sleep." She pushed her hair back from her face. "Look, I know you don't want charity. I get that. But this isn't charity. This is a job. A real job with a salary and benefits and actual meaningful work. And I need someone who understands what it's like to be on the other side. Someone who knows what struggling parents actually need instead of what people assume they need." Ethan looked up from the folder. "Why me?" "Because you're exactly the kind of person this foundation is meant to help. Because you understand the system from the inside. Because you give a damn." She paused. "And because I trust you. We barely know each other." "I know, but I'm a good judge of character, and everything about you tells me you're someone worth trusting." Ethan felt the weight of the folder in his hands, felt the careful thought that had gone into every page. This wasn't some impulsive gesture. This was Victoria doing what she did best, identifying a problem and building a solution. "What about the board? What about your company?" "I don't have a company anymore, but I have resources and I have time, and I have a need to do something that actually matters. This matters." "Victoria, just read it," she said. "Take your time, think about it. And if you decide you're not interested, I'll respect that. But at least consider it, please." Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll read it." Some of the tension left her shoulders. "Thank you." She turned to leave, but Ethan called after her. "Victoria?" She stopped. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to be okay. Without the company, without the board, you're going to figure it out." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "We both are." After Victoria left, Ethan sat at the kitchen table and read through the entire proposal twice. The foundation was called Second Chances, and every page revealed how seriously Victoria had thought this through. There were partnerships with local organizations, plans for job training programs specifically designed for single parents with irregular schedules, emergency fund protocols that didn't require mountains of paperwork, childcare vouchers that could be used at any certified facility in the city. It was exactly what he would have designed if he had the resources and expertise. The salary she was offering was more than he had made at the warehouse and the delivery service combined. Not extravagant, not charity, but fair compensation for real work. There were health benefits, retirement contributions, everything legitimate and professional. But what struck him most was a handwritten note tucked into the back of the folder. "I know you're worried this is about us. It's not. This is about the thousands of parents like you who are working themselves to exhaustion and still can't get ahead. You just happen to be the one who reminded me they exist. Please say yes. Not for me, for them." Ethan read that note 3 times before he finally closed the folder and went to bed. The next morning, Lily woke him up by jumping on his chest. "Dad, Dad, Dad! Mrs. Chen from downstairs said the cameras are gone." Ethan opened his eyes and looked at his daughter, her face bright with excitement. "What?" "The people with cameras, they left. Can I go to school today, please?" He got up and looked out the window. The street below was empty except for the usual morning traffic. No photographers, no news vans, no strangers lurking with telephoto lenses. His phone had a text from David. Victoria's resignation killed the story. "Your old news, congratulations." Ethan should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt a strange hollowness, like something had ended before it had really begun. He made Lily breakfast and walked her to the bus stop. And for the first time in days, nobody stared at them. Nobody took their picture. They were invisible again, just another father and daughter in a city full of them. "See?" Lily said as the bus pulled up. "Everything's back to normal." "Yeah, kiddo, I guess it is." But as he walked back to the apartment, Ethan realized that normal didn't feel the way it used to. Normal felt smaller somehow, more confining. For a few days, he had glimpsed something different, not better necessarily, but bigger. A life that extended beyond survival mode. And now that glimpse was gone, he could feel the walls closing back in. He spent the morning applying for jobs online, his resume looking thinner than ever with the gap in employment and the reason he couldn't use his last supervisor as a reference. By noon, he had submitted applications to 6 different warehouses, 2 grocery stores, and a night security position at an office building. None of them felt right, but right wasn't a luxury he could afford. His phone rang just after 1. It was a number he didn't recognize, but he answered anyway. "Mr. Brooks, this is Jennifer Park from Metro News. I wanted to give you an opportunity to comment on Victoria Hale's new foundation announcement." Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. "What announcement?" "She held a press conference an hour ago, announced she's starting a foundation for single parents and that she's already secured partnerships with 3 major employers in the city. She mentioned you specifically as her inspiration for the project. I was hoping to get your reaction." "I don't have a comment," Ethan said, and hung up. He opened his laptop and found the press conference footage immediately. Victoria was standing in front of a plain backdrop, no lawyers or publicists visible this time, just her and a microphone and that same quiet determination she had shown in his hallway last night. "When I resigned from Hale Technologies," she was saying, "a lot of people asked me what I planned to do next. The truth is, I didn't know. But over the past few days, I've been reminded of something I had forgotten, that business should serve people, not the other way around. So I'm launching Second Chances Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting single parents who are working multiple jobs just to survive. We'll provide job training, emergency funds, childcare assistance, and connections to employers who understand that flexibility and stability aren't mutually exclusive." A reporter raised her hand. "Ms. Hale, is it true that you were inspired by Ethan Brooks, the delivery driver from the hotel incident?" Victoria didn't hesitate. "Yes. Meeting Ethan and learning about his life opened my eyes to how many people are struggling in ways I had never considered. He's a devoted father who works harder than anyone I've met in corporate boardrooms, and he deserves better than a system that punishes him for circumstances beyond his control. This foundation is for him and the thousands of parents like him." Ethan closed the laptop and sat back in his chair. She had done it. She had actually done it. And she had done it publicly, putting her name and her reputation on something that most people wouldn't have given a second thought to. His phone rang again. This time it was Victoria. "Did you watch?" she asked. "Yeah." "And?" "You didn't have to mention me by name." "Yes, I did. People need to understand this isn't abstract. It's about real people with real lives." Ethan rubbed his face with his free hand. "You're making it hard for me to say no." "That's the idea." There was a smile in her voice. "Have you read the proposal?" "Twice." "And?" He took a deep breath. "I need to meet Lily first." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What?" "You're asking me to work with you, to build something together. But Lily is part of any decision I make, and she should know who you are before I commit to anything." "Okay," Victoria said slowly. "When?" "This afternoon. 3 o'clock. There's a playground near the elementary school on 4th Street. We'll be there." "I'll see you then." After they hung up, Ethan sat in the quiet apartment and tried to figure out what he was doing. This was moving too fast. A week ago, he had been a delivery driver trying to make ends meet. Now he was considering going into business with a woman who had just walked away from a tech empire. A woman he barely knew, but who had somehow become important to him in ways he wasn't ready to examine. But he had learned something in the 3 years since his wife died. Sometimes you had to take the leap before you felt ready. Sometimes waiting for certainty meant missing the opportunity entirely. When Lily got home from school, she was full of stories about her day. Emma had brought cupcakes for everyone. Mr. Whiskers, the class hamster, had escaped and been found in the art supplies closet. The science museum field trip was next week, and she needed a permission slip signed. "Dad," she said while they were having a snack at the kitchen table, Can I ask you something? Always. Why were those people taking our picture? Ethan had been dreading this question. Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and other grown-ups think those mistakes are interesting. What mistake did you make? I knocked on the wrong door, Lily frowned. That's not really a mistake, that's just an accident. You're right, but some people saw it differently. That's dumb. Ethan smiled despite himself. Yeah, kiddo, it kind of is. Is that why you've been sad? The question caught him off guard. I haven't been sad. Yes, you have. You get this look on your face like you're thinking about something far away, and you don't smile as much. Ethan reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for you to worry. I'm not worried, I just want you to be happy. She took another bite of her apple. You used to smile more when Mom was alive. The comment hit harder than she probably intended. I know. Do you think you'll ever be happy like that again? I don't know. Maybe. Someday. Lily thought about that for a moment. I think you should try. Mom would want you to. Ethan felt something tight in his chest. His daughter was 6 years old and already wiser than he was. You're probably right. I'm definitely right. She finished her apple and wiped her hands on her jeans. So what are we doing this afternoon? More surprise day? Actually, we're going to the playground, and there's someone I want you to meet. Who? A friend of mine. Her name is Victoria. Is she the lady from the hotel? Ethan should have known Lily would make the connection. Yeah, she is. Is she nice? I think so. You'll have to tell me what you think. They walked to the playground at 2:45, and Ethan's stomach was doing flips the entire way. This felt momentous in a way he couldn't quite articulate. He was bringing two parts of his life together, the part that was stable and certain and built around Lily, and the part that was new and uncertain and centered around a woman who had walked into his life by accident and refused to leave quietly. Victoria was already there when they arrived, sitting on a bench near the swings. She had dressed down again, jeans, sneakers, a simple jacket, and when she saw them approaching, she stood up with an expression that was equal parts nervous and hopeful. Hi, she said. Hi. Ethan turned to Lily. Lily, this is Victoria. Victoria, this is my daughter, Lily. Lily looked up at Victoria with the solemn assessment of a child who knew when something important was happening. You're the one who made the cameras go away. Victoria blinked, surprised. I guess I am. Thank you. I didn't like them. I didn't either. They stood there for a moment in awkward silence, and Ethan realized he had no idea how to navigate this. But then Lily, in the way only children could, solved the problem by pointing at the swings. Do you know how to push someone? She asked Victoria. I think I can manage. Good. Dad always pushes too high and it makes my stomach feel funny. Ethan watched as his daughter grabbed Victoria's hand and led her to the swings, chattering the entire way about how high was too high and how you had to time the pushes right or the rhythm got messed up. Victoria listened with what looked like genuine interest, asking questions and nodding seriously as Lily explained the intricacies of proper swing pushing technique. Once Lily was settled on the swing, Victoria began pushing with careful, measured movements, and Ethan sat down on the bench to watch. This was surreal. A week ago, this woman had been hiding in a penthouse suite, and now she was pushing his daughter on a playground swing like it was the most natural thing in the world. After a while, Lily announced she was ready for the slide, and Victoria followed her to the climbing structure. Ethan stayed on the bench, watching them interact. Lily was showing Victoria how to go down the slide the right way, on your stomach, feet first, and Victoria was gamely attempting it despite being twice Lily's size and clearly not built for playground equipment. When Victoria finally managed to slide down without getting stuck, Lily clapped and declared her a good student. Victoria laughed, really laughed, and Ethan felt something shift inside him, some wall he hadn't even realized he was maintaining. Eventually, Lily ran off to explore the monkey bars, and Victoria came back to sit beside Ethan on the bench. Her hair was messed up from the slide, and there was dirt on her jeans, and she looked more relaxed than he had ever seen her. She's amazing, Victoria said, watching Lily swing from bar to bar with intense concentration. Yeah, she is. You're doing a good job with her. I'm doing my best. They sat in comfortable silence for a minute, and then Victoria said, I meant what I said in the proposal about needing someone who understands. I've spent my whole career making decisions about products and markets and acquisitions, but I've never had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. I've never had to explain to a child why we can't afford the field trip. I need someone who has. Ethan watched his daughter conquer the monkey bars and pump her fist in victory. What if I'm not qualified? I don't have a business degree. I don't know anything about running a foundation. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. She turned to look at him. Unless you're looking for a reason to say no. I'm looking for a reason to say yes without feeling like I'm making a mistake. What would make it feel like the right decision? Ethan thought about that, knowing that this is about the work and not about us. What if it's about both? There it was, the thing they had been dancing around since that first night in her suite. The acknowledgement that something existed between them beyond professional interest or shared circumstance. Victoria, I'm not asking you to make a choice right now, she said quickly. I'm just being honest. Yes, I want you to work with me on the foundation because you're perfect for it. But I also want to spend time with you because you make me feel like a person instead of a position. And maybe those two things are connected. Maybe they're not. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel both. Ethan looked at her, at the vulnerability in her expression and the hope she was trying to hide, and he realized he was tired of pretending too. Tired of telling himself this was too complicated, too fast, too impossible. Tired of choosing safety over possibility. If I say yes to the foundation, he said carefully, it has to be professional first. Clear boundaries. Separate from whatever else might or might not happen between us. Agreed. And Lily comes to the office sometimes. If we're working together, she's part of the package. I can't do the whole childcare shuffle again. We'll set up a space for her. Books, art supplies, whatever she needs. And if this doesn't work, the foundation, us, any of it, we have to be honest about it. No dragging things out because we're trying to be polite. Victoria held out her hand. Deal. Ethan shook it, and the moment their hands touched, something clicked into place. This was happening. He was actually doing this. Lily came running over, breathless and grinning. Did you see? I made it all the way across without falling. We saw, Ethan said. Very impressive. She looked between them, her expression suddenly shrewd. Are you guys friends now? We're working on it, Victoria said. Good. Dad needs more friends. He only really talks to Mrs. Kowalski. Ethan felt his face heat. That's not true. It is a little true, Lily said matter-of-factly. Then she turned to Victoria. Do you like raccoons? Victoria looked momentarily thrown by the question. Sure. What about raccoons who run bakeries? Those are my favorite kind. Lily beamed. Then we're going to be good friends. Come on, I'll tell you about Gerald while we walk home. She grabbed Victoria's hand again and started walking toward the playground exit, launching into an elaborate story about Gerald's expansion plans and his rivalry with a family of entrepreneurial squirrels. Victoria glanced back at Ethan with an expression that was half bemused, half enchanted, and he couldn't help but smile. They walked back to the apartment together, Lily chattering the entire way and Victoria asking questions that showed she was actually listening. When they reached the building, Ethan expected Victoria to say goodbye and leave, but instead Lily invited her up to see her room. I have drawings of Gerald's bakery, she explained, and his new mountain location. You should see them so you know what it looks like. Victoria looked at Ethan for permission, and he nodded. Come on up. The apartment felt smaller with Victoria in it, more cramped and worn around the edges. Ethan saw it through her eyes, the secondhand furniture, the patched couch cushions, the water stain on the ceiling that the landlord kept promising to fix. But Victoria didn't seem to notice or care. She followed Lily to her room and spent 20 minutes looking at drawings and listening to stories and asking questions about Gerald's business model with the kind of seriousness that made Lily light up. When they finally emerged, Lily announced she was hungry, and Ethan started making dinner, pasta and marinara sauce, the same thing he made at least twice a week because it was cheap and filling, and Lily would actually eat it. Can Victoria stay for dinner? Lily asked. Ethan looked at Victoria, expecting her to make an excuse and leave, but instead she said, I'd love to, if that's okay with your dad. It's okay, Ethan heard himself say. So Victoria stayed. She helped set the table while Lily told her about the Science Museum field trip and the permission slip that needed to be signed. She ate pasta and asked questions about school and listened to Lily's opinions on everything from dinosaurs to the best flavor of ice cream. And when Lily accidentally knocked over her water glass, Victoria just grabbed a towel and helped clean it up like it was the most natural thing in the world. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Victoria her favorite movie, an animated film about a young girl who befriends a dragon. They all squeezed onto the couch together, Lily in the middle, and halfway through the movie, Lily fell asleep with her head on Ethan's shoulder. Victoria looked over at them and smiled. She's out. She does this every time. Can't make it through the second act. They watched the rest of the movie in comfortable silence, and when it ended, Ethan carefully carried Lily to her room and tucked her in. When he came back to the living room, Victoria was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. "Thank you for today," she said without turning around. "For letting me meet her, for giving me a chance. Thank you for pushing her on the swings, and for staying for dinner, and for not freaking out when she talked your ear off about a fictional raccoon." Victoria turned to face him, and in the dim light from the kitchen, she looked younger somehow, more like the woman who had opened her door to a stranger than the CEO who had faced down a boardroom. "I meant what I said earlier," she told him, "about wanting to spend time with you. But I also meant what I said about keeping things professional. I'm not trying to complicate your life more than I already have. Maybe I want it complicated." The words hung in the air between them, and Ethan realized he meant them. For 3 years, he had kept his life small and manageable, reduced to the basics of work and Lily and survival. But sitting here now, watching Victoria stand in his living room like she belonged there, he realized he was tired of small, tired of safe. Victoria crossed the room slowly, stopping just in front of him. "Are you sure?" "No, but I don't think I need to be." She reached up and touched his face, her hand warm against his cheek. "This is probably a terrible idea." "Probably. We barely know each other." "I know? And we're about to go into business together, which makes this even more complicated." "Victoria," Ethan said, covering her hand with his. "Stop talking." She smiled, and then she kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, like they were both testing to see if this was real. But then something shifted and the kiss deepened, and Ethan felt 3 years of loneliness and caution and careful control dissolve into something warm and immediate and alive. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "Okay," she said breathlessly. "That was worth the complication." Ethan laughed, surprising himself. "Yeah, it was." They stood there for a moment, just breathing together, and then Victoria stepped back. "I should go. It's late, and you have to get Lily to school in the morning." "When do we start? With the foundation?" "Monday. I've rented office space downtown, nothing fancy, but it has good light and enough room for a team." "A team? That sounds official." "It is official. We're doing this for real." She grabbed her jacket from the back of the chair. "I'll text you the address." Ethan walked her to the door, and she paused in the hallway. "Ethan," she said. "Yeah?" "Your daughter was right. You should smile more. It's a good look on you." After she left, Ethan stood in the doorway for a minute, trying to process everything that had just happened. Then he went to check on Lily one more time. She was sprawled across her bed, Mr. Hopscotch tucked under one arm, completely at peace. "You'd like her, wouldn't you?" he whispered. "You already do." He thought about his wife, about the promise he had made at her bedside that he would take care of their daughter and make sure she grew up happy and loved. He had kept that promise, but somewhere along the way he had forgotten that being happy himself was part of that equation. Lily had seen it. She had asked him if he would ever be happy again. Maybe the answer was yes. Maybe it was starting right now. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Victoria sent him files to review, partnership agreements, program outlines, budget projections. They texted constantly, bouncing ideas back and forth, refining plans, building something together that felt bigger than both of them. On Sunday night, Lily helped him pick out an outfit for his first day. "You need to look professional," she said seriously, sorting through his limited wardrobe. "But not too fancy. Just right." "When did you become a fashion consultant?" "Emma's mom works in an office. She says first impressions matter." They settled on his best jeans and a button-down shirt he usually saved for parent-teacher conferences. Lily made him promise to text her at lunch and tell her how it was going. "And say hi to Victoria from me," she added. "Tell her I hope Gerald's mountain location is doing well." Monday morning, Ethan dropped Lily at school and drove to the address Victoria had sent him. The office was on the third floor of a renovated building near the river, the kind of place that had probably been a warehouse once and was now full of startups and creative agencies. The Second Chances Foundation name was already on the door. Victoria was inside, arranging furniture with the help of two people Ethan didn't recognize, a woman about his age with short, dark hair and a younger guy with glasses and a tablet. "Ethan!" Victoria's face lit up when she saw him. "Perfect timing. This is Maya, our program coordinator, and James, who's handling our tech and database systems." They shook hands, and Maya said, "Victoria's told us a lot about you. We're excited to work with you." "Same," Ethan managed, feeling slightly overwhelmed. Victoria showed him around the space. There was a main area with desks and a conference table, a small kitchen, and a separate room that she had set up as a kid-friendly space with books and art supplies and a comfortable chair. "For Lily," she explained, "or any of the kids who come with their parents when they need help. I figured we should practice what we preach about flexibility." Ethan looked at the room, the bright colors, the thoughtful touches, the way Victoria had actually listened when he said Lily was part of the package, and felt something warm settle in his chest. "This is perfect," he said. They spent the morning going through the foundation's goals and structure. Victoria had already lined up partnerships with 3 major employers who were willing to create flexible positions specifically for single parents. Maya had been working with local childcare centers to develop a voucher system. James had built a database to track participants and measure outcomes without drowning people in paperwork. It was real. It was actually happening. During lunch, Ethan texted Lily. "First day is going great. Victoria says Gerald's mountain location is thriving, considering a third location in the desert." She texted back immediately. "Desert is too hot for baked goods. Tell her to try the forest instead." He showed the text to Victoria, who laughed and said, "She's absolutely right. Gerald should diversify into woodland markets." That afternoon, their first participant arrived. Her name was Sandra, a mother of 2 who had been working 3 part-time jobs and still couldn't afford stable housing. Maya did the intake while Ethan and Victoria observed, and by the end of the hour, they had connected Sandra with a full-time position at one of their partner companies, emergency funds to cover her first month's rent and childcare assistance. Sandra cried when she left, and so did Maya. "This is why we're doing this," Victoria said quietly, watching through the window as Sandra walked to her car with her shoulders straighter than when she arrived. Over the next few days, more people came. A father who had been sleeping in his car to save money for his daughter's asthma medication. A mother who had been fired for missing work when her son got sick. A grandfather raising his granddaughter alone after his daughter died. Each story was different, but the thread running through all of them was the same. People working impossible hours, making impossible choices, and still falling short. Ethan found himself energized in a way he hadn't been in years. This wasn't just a job. This was purpose. Every person they helped felt like a small victory against a system that seemed designed to grind people down. And through it all, Victoria was there. Not as a boss, but as a partner. She listened to his ideas. She trusted his judgment. She valued his perspective in a way that made him feel seen for the first time since his wife died. They were careful to keep things professional at work, but at the end of each day, after Maya and James had gone home and the office was quiet, they would sit together at the conference table and talk. Sometimes about the foundation, sometimes about their lives, sometimes about nothing in particular. One evening, about 2 weeks in, Victoria asked him about his wife. "What was her name?" she said gently. "Sarah." "What was she like?" Ethan thought about it. Stubborn, funny. She had this way of making everything feel possible, even when it wasn't. Lily gets that from her. "Do you think she would approve? Of the foundation? Of us?" "I think she would tell me I'm an idiot for taking this long to figure out what I wanted. And then she'd probably make some joke about how I always needed someone else to organize my life because I'm terrible at it on my own." Victoria smiled. "She sounds wonderful." She was. "Do you still miss her?" "Every day. But it's different now. It used to be this sharp pain that made it hard to breathe. Now it's more like an ache. Still there, but I can live with it. Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. I'm glad. Not that you miss her, but that you can live with it. Me too. The moment stretched between them, comfortable and warm, and Ethan realized that this, sitting here with Victoria, building something meaningful, allowing himself to feel something other than exhaustion, this was what moving forward looked like. Not forgetting Sarah, but making space for something new alongside the memory of her. His phone buzzed, a text from Lily. Mrs. Kowalski says you're working late again. Are you coming home soon? He showed it to Victoria. I should go. Bring her by tomorrow, Victoria suggested. She can do homework in the kid room while we finish the grant applications. She'd like that. The next afternoon, Lily arrived at the office with her backpack and a huge smile. She immediately claimed the kid room as her territory and spent an hour drawing while Ethan worked. When she got bored, Victoria took a break and they worked on a puzzle together, and Ethan watched them through the glass wall of the conference room and felt something click into place. This could work. All of it. The foundation, the relationship, the blending of his two worlds into something whole. It wasn't perfect, and it would probably be messy sometimes, but it was real, and real was better than safe. That evening, as Ethan was packing up Lily's things to head home, his phone rang. It was a number he recognized immediately, his former supervisor from the warehouse. Ethan, it's Mike. Listen, I heard about what you're doing now, the foundation thing. I wanted to apologize. Ethan stepped into the hallway, keeping his voice low. For what? For letting you go the way I did. No conversation, no chance to explain. I was under pressure from corporate, and I took the easy way out. That wasn't right. Water under the bridge, Ethan said, though the words felt strange in his mouth. A month ago, that firing had felt like the end of the world. Now it felt like ancient history. Well, I also wanted to tell you something. 3 of our guys have already applied to your foundation's job program. They're all single dads working overnight shifts because it pays better, but it's killing them. If you can help them find something with normal hours, you'll be doing more than this company ever did. After they hung up, Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment, letting that sink in. The foundation was already making ripples, reaching people he would never have known needed help. It was working. When he went back inside, Victoria was helping Lily put her puzzle away, and the two of them were debating whether Gerald the raccoon should expand internationally. France has excellent pastry traditions, Victoria was saying seriously. He could learn a lot. But Gerald doesn't speak French, Lily countered. How would he talk to the customers? He could hire a translator or learn the language. Gerald seems like a determined raccoon. Ethan leaned against the doorframe and watched them, and something in his chest expanded. This was his life now. Not just survival, but something richer and more complicated and infinitely better. The following weeks brought their own challenges. The foundation's profile grew quickly, which meant more people seeking help but also more scrutiny. A local news station did a feature on them, interviewing Sandra and 2 other participants who talked about how the program had changed their lives. The piece aired during prime time, and the next morning they had 50 new applications waiting. We need more staff, Maya said, looking overwhelmed as she sorted through intake forms. And more funding, and possibly more hours in the day. Victoria immediately started reaching out to potential donors, leveraging every connection she still had from her time in tech. Ethan focused on the human side, conducting interviews and making sure each person who walked through their door felt heard rather than processed. James built automated systems to handle the paperwork while keeping the personal touch that made the foundation different from government programs. But success brought complications. One afternoon, a reporter from a business journal showed up unannounced, wanting to write a profile about Victoria's transition from tech billionaire to nonprofit founder. I'm particularly interested in the personal angle, the reporter said, pulling out a recorder. The connection between you and Mr. Brooks. Our readers want to know if there's a romantic relationship at the center of this foundation. Victoria's expression went cold. This foundation exists because there's a need. The nature of my relationship with Ethan is irrelevant to the work we're doing. But surely you can see how people might be curious. A billionaire and a delivery driver. A billionaire and a human being, Ethan interrupted, stepping forward. Who happened to have a conversation that opened both our eyes to things we should have been seeing all along. You want a story? Write about Sandra, who's working her first full-time job in 6 years and can finally afford to keep her kids in the same school all year. Write about Marcus, who doesn't have to choose between sleeping and spending time with his daughter anymore. Write about the 47 families we've helped in 2 months. That's the story. The reporter looked between them, then put away the recorder. Fair enough, but for what it's worth, the personal angle would have sold more copies. After she left, Victoria turned to Ethan. Thank you for that. I meant every word. I know, that's why it mattered. That night, after everyone had gone home, Victoria and Ethan sat in the office kitchen with takeout containers spread between them. It had become their routine, working late, ordering too much food, talking about everything and nothing. Can I ask you something? Victoria said, picking at her noodles. Always. Do you regret it? Any of it? The way everything happened? Ethan thought about that rainy night at the Monarch Tower, about knocking on the wrong door and finding someone who would change everything. No, it was messy and painful, and I wouldn't want to do it again, but I don't regret it. Even losing your jobs. Even that. Those jobs were just keeping me afloat. This, he gestured around the office, this is actually living. Victoria smiled, but there was something tentative in her expression. And us? Do you regret us? Why would you ask that? Because we never really talked about what we are. We've been so focused on the foundation that we haven't defined this. She waved a hand between them. Whatever this is? Ethan set down his fork and looked at her. What do you want it to be? I want it to be real, not something we're hiding or keeping separate from the rest of our lives. But I also don't want to rush you or make you feel like you have to choose between the foundation and a relationship. Those aren't mutually exclusive, aren't they? We're business partners. If things go wrong between us personally, it could destroy everything we've built. Or, Ethan said, reaching across the table to take her hand, we could trust that we're both adults who care about each other and about this work enough to handle whatever comes. We could stop treating this like it's fragile and start treating it like it's strong. Victoria's fingers tightened around his. When did you get so wise? I have a 6-year-old who asks hard questions. You learn to think on your feet. She laughed, and the tension in the room dissolved. Speaking of Lily, I was thinking about something. What's that? Next month is her birthday, right? Ethan was surprised she remembered. He had mentioned it once in passing weeks ago. Yeah, November 15th. Would it be okay if I helped plan something? I've never planned a kid's birthday party before, but I'd like to try. The offer touched something deep in Ethan's chest. You don't have to do that. I want to, if you'll let me. He thought about Lily, about how she lit up whenever Victoria came around, about the drawings she had started making that included a tall woman with dark hair alongside her and her father. Okay, but fair warning, she's going to want something involving Gerald the raccoon baker. I wouldn't expect anything less. Over the next few weeks, Victoria threw herself into party planning with the same intensity she brought to everything else. She consulted with Lily about themes and decorations, recruited Maya and James to help with setup, and somehow convinced a local bakery to create a custom cake featuring a raccoon in a chef's hat standing in front of a tiny bakery. Ethan watched it all unfold with a mixture of amazement and gratitude. Victoria didn't just show up, she invested. She cared about making Lily's birthday special in a way that went beyond obligation or courtesy. The party was held at the foundation office on a Saturday afternoon. Lily had invited her entire class, and the space was transformed with streamers and balloons and a banner that read, Gerald's Grand Opening. Victoria had even created a scavenger hunt that led kids through a story about Gerald expanding his bakery empire. Ethan stood in the corner watching his daughter run around with her friends, her laughter echoing off the walls, and felt something close to overwhelming gratitude. 2 months ago, he had been struggling to keep his head above water. Now his daughter was having the birthday party of her dreams in an office that represented hope for dozens of families surrounded by people who cared. Mrs. Kowalski had come too, and she pulled Ethan aside while the kids were hunting for clues. That woman is good for you, she said, nodding toward Victoria, who was helping a shy girl find a hidden raccoon sticker. I know. Sarah would have liked her. The comment caught Ethan off guard. Mrs. Kowalski had known his wife, had been at the funeral, had held Lily when Ethan couldn't. You think so? He asked. I know so. Sarah always wanted you to find someone who saw you for who you are, not just what you do. This one sees you. When it came time for cake, everyone gathered around and sang happy birthday while Lily beamed. She made a wish and blew out the candles, and when Ethan asked her later what she had wished for, she said, "I can't tell you or it won't come true." But it already kind of did. After the party, after the parents had picked up their kids and the decorations had been taken down, Victoria and Ethan sat on the floor of the empty office with Lily between them. She was exhausted, but happy, her new toys scattered around her. "Best birthday ever," she declared. "Even better than the year we went to the aquarium." "High praise," Ethan said. Lily yawned and leaned against Victoria's shoulder. "Victoria?" "Yeah, sweetie? Are you going to be around for my next birthday too?" Ethan felt his breath catch, but Victoria didn't hesitate. "If your dad will have me, I'd love to be." Lily smiled sleepily. "Good. Next year Gerald should open a location on the moon." After Lily fell asleep, Ethan carried her to the car while Victoria gathered the last of the party supplies. When he came back inside, he found Victoria sitting at one of the desks, looking at a drawing Lily had made, the three of them standing in front of the foundation office, all smiling. "She drew this today," Victoria said softly. "During the party. She said it was her family." Ethan looked at the drawing, at the way Lily had included Victoria without hesitation, and felt something settle into place. "Is that okay?" he asked. "Being part of this? Part of us?" Victoria stood and crossed to him, her eyes bright. "It's more than okay. It's everything I didn't know I was looking for." He kissed her then, slow and deliberate, and when they pulled apart, she was smiling. "So we're really doing this?" she asked. "All of it? The foundation, the relationship, the whole complicated, beautiful mess?" "Yeah, we're really doing this." The months that followed weren't perfect. There were funding challenges and staffing issues and days when the need felt overwhelming. The foundation's success meant longer hours and higher stakes. Some participants succeeded brilliantly. Others struggled despite all the support they were given. Maya burned out and had to take a week off. James dealt with a database crash that lost 2 days of work. Ethan and Victoria had their first real fight about whether to accept a large donation from a corporation with questionable labor practices. But through it all, they kept showing up. For the foundation, for each other, for Lily, for the families who needed them. They learned to navigate the complicated balance between professional partnership and personal relationship. They set boundaries and then renegotiated them as circumstances changed. They made mistakes and cleaned them up and tried to do better. By spring, the Second Chances Foundation had helped over 200 families. They had expanded to a second office across town and hired 3 more staff members. Local companies were reaching out to them, asking how to create more family-friendly policies. Other cities were calling, wanting to replicate the model. And somewhere in the middle of all that growth and chaos and purpose, Ethan realized he was happy. Not the careful, guarded contentment he had settled for after Sarah died, but actual joy. The kind that made him wake up excited about the day ahead. The kind that made him laugh easily and dream bigger. One evening in late April, Victoria came to the apartment for dinner. It had become a regular thing. She would show up with groceries and cook with Lily while Ethan pretended to supervise. Tonight they were making homemade pizza, and the kitchen was a disaster of flour and sauce and cheese. After dinner, while Lily was showing Victoria her latest Gerald drawings, the moon location was now fully realized with detailed floor plans. Ethan's phone buzzed with an email. It was from a national foundation that had been following their work. He read it twice to make sure he understood correctly, then looked up at Victoria. "We got it," he said. She looked up from the drawings. "Got what?" "The grant. The big one. The one we applied for 2 months ago and didn't think we had a chance at getting." Victoria's eyes went wide. "The $500,000 grant?" "Yeah." She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and threw her arms around him. Lily jumped up and down even though she didn't fully understand what was happening, just that it was good news. "This changes everything," Victoria said, still holding on to him. "We can expand the childcare program. We can hire more case managers. We can help so many more people." "We can do all of that," Ethan agreed, but first I think we should celebrate." They ordered ice cream and stayed up late making plans, Lily eventually falling asleep on the couch between them. When Ethan carried her to bed, he found Victoria standing at the living room window, looking out at the city lights the way she had that first night in her penthouse suite. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming up behind her. "How different everything is from 6 months ago. How I was hiding in that hotel room, feeling sorry for myself, thinking my life was over. And then you knocked on my door. Best wrong turn I ever made." She turned to face him, and in the dim light from the kitchen, he could see the emotion in her expression. "Ethan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer. Okay? Do you see a future here? With me? With this work? With all of it? Because I do. I see years of building something that matters. I see Lily growing up knowing she can change the world. I see us making a real difference. But I need to know if you see that too, or if you're still keeping one foot out the door in case it all falls apart." Ethan thought about the past 6 months, about everything that had changed and everything he had learned. He thought about the families they had helped, the purpose he had found, the love that had grown in the spaces he thought were too damaged to hold anything new. "I see it," he said. "All of it. And I'm not going anywhere." Victoria's smile was brilliant. "Good. Because I have another question." "What's that?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. When she opened it, there was a key inside. "Move in with me. Not the penthouse, I sold that. But I bought a house. It has a yard for Lily, an office for work, and enough space for all of us. It's not fancy, just normal and comfortable and real. And I want you to share it with me." Ethan stared at the key, then at Victoria, then back at the key. "You bought a house?" "Last month. I was going to surprise you, but then I realized that was presumptuous, and we should actually talk about it like adults." "A house with a yard." "And a dog, if Lily wants one. I know she's been asking." Ethan laughed, the sound surprised out of him. "You're serious?" "Completely." "What do you say?" He thought about their cramped apartment, about the water stain on the ceiling and the neighbors who complained and the constant feeling of making do. Then he thought about a house with space to breathe, a yard where Lily could play, a real home built around the life they were creating together. "I say yes, but we're telling Lily together. This is her decision too." The next morning over breakfast, they sat Lily down and explained the plan. She listened carefully, her expression serious, and when they finished, she had only one question. "Will the new house have room for Gerald?" "Gerald the raccoon?" Ethan asked, confused. "No, Gerald the dog. I'm going to name our dog Gerald." Victoria laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. "Your dog can be named whatever you want." "Then yes, I want to move. When can we get Gerald?" They moved in June, on a Saturday that started with rain but cleared by afternoon. Mrs. Kowalski came to help pack and cried when she saw them loading boxes into the truck. "You're going to forget about me in your fancy new house," she said, wiping her eyes. "Never," Ethan promised. "And it's not fancy, it's just bigger. You'll come visit." "Every week," Lily added. "You have to meet Gerald. We're getting him next month." The house was in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of the city, the kind of place where kids rode bikes in the street and neighbors actually knew each other's names. It was modest but solid, with hardwood floors and large windows that let in plenty of light. There was a kitchen big enough for all of them to cook together, a backyard with an old oak tree perfect for climbing, and a room that Victoria had already set up as a home office so they could work on foundation business during evenings and weekends. Lily claimed the bedroom with the window seat immediately, and by evening the house was full of boxes and furniture in various states of assembly and a sense of possibility that Ethan hadn't felt in years. That night, after Lily was asleep in her new room and the boxes were mostly unpacked, Ethan and Victoria sat on the back porch watching fireflies drift across the yard. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up. On the foundation, on me, on all of it. You could have walked away a dozen times, and you didn't." Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. "Neither did you. We built this together." "Yeah, we did." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Ethan thought about the path that had brought them here. A wrong door on a rainy night, a bouquet of dying flowers. A conversation that neither of them had been looking for, but both of them needed. Everything that came after. The scandal, the job loss, the press conferences, the foundation, the rebuilding, had felt impossible in the moment, but inevitable in hindsight. Like a story that could only have ended one way. even though he couldn't have seen it at the beginning. The following month, they adopted Gerald. He was a golden retriever puppy with a tendency to steal socks and an unlimited capacity for love. Lily was convinced he understood every word she said and would grow up to be the smartest dog in the world. The foundation continued to grow. By the end of summer, they had helped over 400 families and had started getting requests from other cities wanting to replicate their model. Victoria traveled to consult with nonprofits and government programs, always bringing back ideas for how they could improve their own work. Ethan focused on training new case managers, making sure the personal touch that made the foundation special didn't get lost as they scaled. In September, on the anniversary of the night they met, Victoria planned something special. She wouldn't tell Ethan what it was, just that he needed to be at the Monarch Tower at 8 in the evening. He showed up in the same jacket he had worn that rainy night, feeling ridiculous but also touched that she had remembered. When he got to the lobby, the concierge, a different one than before, directed him to the penthouse floor. Victoria was waiting outside Suite 2849, the same door she had opened 1 year ago. She was holding a bouquet of white orchids. "I thought we should commemorate the occasion," she said with a smile. "By recreating our first meeting? By acknowledging how far we've come." She handed him the flowers. "These were supposed to be for someone else, but I think they belong to you." Ethan took the bouquet, remembering how heavy and wilted the original flowers had felt in his hands, how lost he had been, how desperate. Now standing here with Victoria, the flowers felt like something else, a symbol of hope, of second chances, of life that grew from unexpected places. "Do you want to come in?" Victoria asked, opening the door to the suite. "This is the same room? I rented it for the night. I wanted to show you something." He followed her inside, and she led him to the windows that overlooked the city. The view was exactly as he remembered, light stretching to the horizon, rain streaking the glass, the world looking both vast and close. "1 year ago we stood here and talked about loneliness," Victoria said, "about running from things and trying to keep up, about feeling invisible and wondering if anything would ever change." "I remember. And now look at us. We're not running anymore. We're not invisible. We're building something that matters with someone who sees us." Ethan set the flowers down and pulled her close. "We are." "I love you," Victoria said, and it was the first time either of them had said it out loud. "I love your dedication and your kindness and the way you put Lily first, always. I love that you knocked on my door and didn't run away when things got hard. I love the life we're building together." "I love you too," Ethan said, and felt the truth of it settle into his bones. "I love that you see people instead of problems. I love that you make Lily laugh. I love that you took the biggest risk of your life because you refused to compromise who you are." They kissed as the rain began to fall harder outside, the same rain that had been falling that first night, and Ethan thought about how much could change in a year, how a wrong door could lead to the right person, how losing everything could mean finding what actually mattered. The next morning, Ethan woke up in their house to find Lily and Gerald already awake and playing in the backyard. Victoria was making coffee in the kitchen, humming to herself, and the morning light was streaming through the windows in a way that made everything look golden. This was his life now, not the one he had planned, not the one he had expected, but the one he had built from the wreckage and the mistakes and the moments of courage when it would have been easier to give up. He went to the kitchen and wrapped his arms around Victoria from behind, and she leaned back against him with a contented sigh. "What are we doing today?" she asked. "We have that meeting with the mayor about expanding the program," Ethan reminded her. "And Lily has soccer practice at 3, and I think Gerald needs to go to the vet for his shots." "Busy day." "Always is. Wouldn't have it any other way." Through the window, they could see Lily throwing a tennis ball for Gerald, who was bounding after it with more enthusiasm than skill. The oak tree's leaves were just starting to turn gold at the edges, summer giving way to fall, everything changing and staying the same all at once. 2 years later, the Second Chances Foundation had offices in 6 cities and had helped over 2,000 families. Ethan and Victoria had been featured in magazines and news programs, but they always made sure the focus stayed on the families they served rather than their own story. Lily was 8 now, still drawing pictures of Gerald's expanding bakery empire and still asking hard questions that made Ethan think. She had adjusted beautifully to their blended life. splitting time between school and the foundation office, between homework and helping with donation drives, between being a kid and learning what it meant to care about making the world better. On a cool October afternoon, Ethan was in the backyard building a treehouse in the oak tree. It was taking forever because he wasn't particularly handy, but Lily had asked for it and he was determined to make it happen. Victoria came out with lemonade and sat on the porch steps watching him work. "You know we could hire someone to do that," she said. "Where's the fun in that?" "The fun is in not falling out of a tree and breaking your leg." "I'm being careful." She laughed, and he loved the sound of it, easy and genuine and full of joy. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a while. "Always. Do you ever think about that night when you knocked on my door?" Ethan climbed down from the tree and sat beside her on the steps. "All the time." "What do you think about?" "How close I came to not knocking at all. How easy it would have been to just go home and forget the whole thing. How different everything would be if I had made that choice." "Do you wish you had?" "Not even for a second." He took her hand. "That was the night my life started moving forward instead of just continuing. That was the night I met the person who would help me remember how to be happy." Victoria rested her head on his shoulder. "We saved each other, you know. I was drowning in that penthouse and you pulled me out. But you were drowning too, in your own way." "I know." They sat there in comfortable silence, Gerald snoring at their feet, the sound of Lily's laughter drifting from inside where she was video calling with Mrs. Kowalski. The treehouse was half finished, dinner needed to be started, there were foundation grants to review before tomorrow's meeting. Life was full and complicated and sometimes overwhelming. But it was also beautiful. Not despite the complexity, but because of it. That night, after Lily was in bed and the dishes were done and the grant proposals were reviewed, Ethan found Victoria in their bedroom looking at something on her phone. "What's that?" he asked. She turned the screen to show him. It was the original news article from that first scandal, the grainy photo of him standing in the Monarch Tower lobby with his dripping flowers. "I was thinking about framing this," she said, "to remind us where we started." "That's a terrible photo of me." "I know. But it's also the moment everything changed." Ethan looked at the image, himself exhausted and lost and holding flowers meant for someone else, and then at Victoria, who was smiling in that way that meant she had made up her mind about something. "Okay," he said, "frame it, but I'm writing the caption." "Deal. What will it say?" He thought about it. "How about the wrong door that led me home?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears, the good kind. "Perfect." 3 months later, on a snowy December evening, Ethan came home from the foundation office to find the house lit up with more lights than usual. When he walked inside, there were candles everywhere, and soft music playing, and Lily sitting at the kitchen table with a very serious expression on her face. "Dad," she said formally, "Victoria needs to talk to you in the living room. I'm supposed to stay here and not listen, but I might listen a little bit." Ethan raised an eyebrow, but went to the living room where Victoria was standing by the fireplace looking nervous. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's perfect. I just have something to ask you." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. When she opened it, there was a simple gold band inside. "I know this might seem backwards," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "And I know we've already built a life together and we don't need a piece of paper to prove what we are. But I want to marry you, Ethan. I want to stand up in front of everyone we care about and promise to keep building this beautiful, complicated life together. I want to be Lily's stepmother officially. I want everything we already have, but I want to celebrate it and acknowledge it and make it official." Ethan felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Are you proposing to me?" "Yes. Is that okay?" He laughed, the sound coming out rough with tears he was trying to hold back. "It's more than okay, but I have to warn you, I already asked Lily for permission to propose to you next month. She helped me pick out a ring and everything." Victoria's eyes went wide. "You did?" "Yeah, but you beat me to it." From the kitchen, they heard Lily's voice. "I knew it! Dad, you owe me $5. I told you she'd do it first." They both laughed, and Victoria stepped forward, still holding the box. "So is that a yes?" "That's a yes." She slipped the ring onto his finger, and he pulled her into a kiss that was interrupted by Lily running into the room and throwing her arms around both of them. "We're getting married!" Lily shouted. "Can I be the flower girl? Can Gerald be the ring bearer? Can we have the wedding at the foundation office?" "All of that sounds perfect," Victoria said, laughing and crying at the same time. They got married the following spring in the backyard of their house, under the oak tree where the treehouse Ethan had finally finished stood as testament to his stubborn determination to do things himself. The ceremony was small, just close friends, foundation staff, Mrs. Kowalski and Lily, who took her role as flower girl very seriously and made Gerald wear a bow tie. When it came time for the vows, Ethan spoke from the heart. "2 years ago, I knocked on your door by accident, and you invited me in. You've been inviting me in ever since, into your life, into your dreams, into a future I couldn't have imagined, but that feels more right than anything I've ever known. You saw me when I felt invisible. You believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself. You loved my daughter like she was your own. And you built something beautiful out of a moment that could have been nothing. I promise to keep showing up, keep building, keep choosing you every day for the rest of my life." Victoria's vows were shorter, but no less powerful. "Ethan, you taught me that real strength isn't about power or control. It's about showing up for the people you love even when it's hard. You taught me that home isn't a place. It's the people who see you for who you are and love you anyway. You gave me a purpose bigger than profit and a family I didn't know I was missing. I promise to honor that gift every single day." When they kissed, Lily cheered and Gerald barked and Mrs. Kowalski cried, and Ethan felt like the luckiest man alive. The reception was held at the foundation office, which seemed fitting. The space that had started as an idea and a proposal was now filled with people they had helped, people they worked with, people who believed in second chances the way they did. There were speeches and toasts and stories about how far they had all come. Sandra, their first participant, gave a toast that made everyone cry. She talked about how she had been living in her car with her 2 kids, how she had almost given up, and how the foundation had given her not just a job, but hope. She was a case manager for them now, helping other families the way she had been helped. Marcus from the warehouse spoke too, talking about how the foundation had helped him find a job with normal hours so he could actually see his daughter grow up. He had brought his little girl with him, and she spent most of the reception playing with Lily and chasing Gerald around the office. As the evening wound down and the sun set over the city, Ethan found himself standing by the window with Victoria, looking out at the same skyline they had gazed at from the Monarch Tower that first night. "Happy?" Victoria asked, threading her fingers through his. "Beyond measure." "Me too." Behind them, Lily was showing off her flower girl dress to anyone who would pay attention, and Gerald was sleeping under a table, exhausted from all the excitement. The foundation office was full of laughter and music and the kind of joy that came from people who had fought hard for their happiness and won. "You know what the best part is?" Ethan said. "What's that?" "We get to keep doing this. Every day. Building something that matters with someone I love." Victoria smiled. "That's exactly what I was thinking." They stood there together as the light faded and the stars came out. 2 people who had found each other by accident and built a life on purpose. The foundation would keep growing. New challenges would emerge. Life would continue to be complicated and messy and full of moments that required courage and faith and determination. But they would face it together the way they had faced everything else, with honesty and love and an unwavering belief that the wrong door could sometimes lead to exactly the right place. And somewhere in the city, in apartments and houses across 6 different cities, families that the Second Chances Foundation had helped were living their own versions of this story. Single parents who could finally breathe, kids who didn't have to worry about where they would sleep, people who had been invisible finding ways to be seen, all because one exhausted delivery driver had knocked on the wrong door and one lonely billionaire had decided to answer. All because they had both been brave enough to stay when it would have been easier to walk away. All because sometimes the biggest mistakes led to the most beautiful beginnings. The rain that had been threatening all evening finally began to fall, soft and gentle, drumming on the roof of the office building. And Ethan Brooks, standing in the foundation he had helped build, holding the hand of the woman he loved, surrounded by the family and community they had created together, felt something he hadn't felt since the day his wife died. He felt complete. Not because the pain was gone or the struggles had ended, but because he had learned what his daughter had tried to teach him all along, that you could survive the hard things and still find joy on the other side. That love didn't replace loss, but it could exist alongside it. That second chances weren't just about getting another opportunity, but about being brave enough to take it. The story that began with a wrong door and a bouquet of dying flowers had become something far greater than either of them could have imagined. Not just a romance or a redemption, but a revolution, a quiet, powerful transformation of how they saw themselves and what they believed was possible. And as the rain fell and the music played and Lily danced with her new stepmother while Gerald watched with adoring eyes, Ethan knew with absolute certainty that every wrong turn, every mistake, every moment of pain had been worth it to arrive at this moment. Because this was home, this was family, this was love, and it had all started with a knock on the wrong door.